Hey, welcome back to Russ Toter Garage. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. I know I did. Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays, other than Halloween, which is number one. But besides that, try to get back on this Buick and get something done now. So I'm just fumbling through this thing here as I figure out what I had done and not done. Just bolted the water pump on that I found laying around. No, I did not replace it. It does not look like it's the original. So I threw that back on there. And nothing really to say there other than, reminder, if you're an old school guy like I am and grew up building small block and big block Chevys, you knew that you had to put sealant on the bolts for the water pump. Well, one other little advantage of the LS, don't need to do that. Just another thing they did to make things simpler. The bolts are blind, no sealant needed on the threads. Thanks to whoever replaced that water pump in the past and put RTV all over those bolts, I got to clean it all up, no problem. So no thread sealer needed on those bolts. So just 6 bolts, very simple, it's on there, so nice. Now I'm just gonna go find the front accessory bracket. I think 4 bolts, and that whole thing goes on there. All right, found my accessory drive. All in one piece as I removed it before. I'll just get it lined up where it needs to be. I'm gonna have to climb inside the car because it's heavy. So at this point, I think I'm ready to put the wiring on. As you can see, I jumped ahead a little bit because, I mean, turning wrenches, I don't know how much I should video, how much I shouldn't. All I did was put the water pump on. Not much to talk about there, 6 bolts. So the water pump's on, front accessory drive is on. Again, very simple, 4 or 5 bolts, the whole thing comes right off. I put my coil packs on. I put my stock spark plugs in for now because I'm going to start this up as stock. I have colder plugs to put in for the turbo. The one thing I did spend some time on last year was what spark plug wires to use to actually work with these headers. And I found these. I think I got these through Summit. So they, I'm sure they were not expensive because everything I build is a budget build. So I don't know how much they cost. I don't remember. I'd have to look it up, but I seriously doubt they were a lot of money. But all I know is they work. I had to shorten up some of my stainless studs there to get a little bit more clearance around the boots, which now is going to give me ADD, and I'm probably going to have to come back and shorten them all so they look the same. But anyway, it looks like they're going to clear. The header's okay, which is good because that was a concern of mine. So that's all wired up. Plugs are done. I put the line on for the brake booster. That's there. I still have to do my power steering lines, which I think will not be that big a deal. We'll get to that when we get to it. I did want to try to use a mechanical fan, but once again, it's not going to happen because the throttle body on these engines is right behind the fan, so I can't get anything to turn and clear this nicely and still keep that fan. So once again, going electric. I really wanted to try to save the mechanical to save some money, but I'm gonna go electric on this one as well. So I think I can install this wiring harness now. If you saw my video where I went over the red and the blue harness, I explained why these harnesses out of the box would not work with the truck engine and how to fix it. One thing I did find that was a mistake of mine, had nothing to do with the Vortec versus LS, that's all as it was, but when I was bugging out the wires on this, I had a white wire that went to the transmission plug that was not in position S and should have been. Well, it should have been for the 4L60, but what I forgot was I must have been thinking ahead. You're right. And I ordered a harness for a 4L80, thinking that I would maybe someday put an 80 in this car instead of the Turbo 400. And when you order a 4L80 harness, they put the TCC lockup wire in position S. So this harness was wired correctly from the manufacturer for the 4L80. That's my fault. So the only real, I'll call it a defect in this harness, was that white tack wire that was tied to 12 volts. Other than that, this was wired as it should be for an LS1 with a 4L80. And if you watch that video, you'll understand what I mean with LS1 versus Vortec. This was not designed to work on a Vortec engine. But now that I've made those changes in the video, this should work fine. All right, so in preparation for installing the harness, I just laid it out on the trunk of the car, kind of the layout of how it's going to go in, just so I could figure out how it was all going to lay out. The grommet slides along wherever you need it, but this will be pretty much the back corner of the engine, passenger side, and these wires will go down the passenger side bank. This will run along the back of the engine, and we have the ground wire that'll go the cylinder head. This is for the knock sensors, and I believe this one's going to be for the map. Not sure why I didn't label it, but I think it'll be pretty obvious. Maybe I labeled the cam sensor one, we'll see. But this side will run along the back of the engine, and this side will go on the driver's side of the engine for the fuel injectors and such. And then everything from here down will go inside the car with the fuse box and the PCM and such. The transmission lines are here. Those will run down the back. So again, this is around the rear corner of the engine. What tipped me off to the fact that I purchased a 4L80 harness and not a 60 harness, which is not normal for me, was in the box was these additional wires. And what this is for the second speed sensor that's used on the 4L80, and then it's got the PCM wires there. When you buy one of these eBay harnesses for the 80, it's really a 60 harness, and they give you the parts to make it work with an 80, which is why that white wire was tied off and the lockup was in position S. I just didn't remember that that's what I bought, because I don't normally buy an 80 harness. So I have this for the future if I want to switch it back to an 80. Works just as well. Now again, because this was an LS1 designed harness, it has the EV1 fuel injector connectors on the ends, which won't work with the Multecs, but they did send for free adapters to go from the EV1 to the Multec. Again, all of this for $100 is just unbeatable. It really is. I mean, for me, yes, it was worth the time to move these wires around and make this work as long as it works. But I'm going to fire it with these adapters, but I don't really like adapters, and I think having all that extra length of wire is going to look kind of screwy. So I'm going to install these and start the engine, but ultimately I'm going to cut these off and cut the EV1s off and solder in the correct ends on this harness so it looks more factory. All right, so first thing I'm going to do, now that I've laid this out and have an idea what's what, is I have to figure out where this is going to go. This is going to be, from best guess measurements, 2¼ inch hole. I don't remember. On the Hudson, I think I made it a little bit too big, but I don't remember what it was drilled to. But the whole thing is finding where's that going to come through. Now this has a, I normally would want to put it right around here, but looking inside the car, I have a heating plenum that runs right along the top side of this indentation. Plus, I got the transmission stick here. I don't want to get in the way of that. I think I'm going to go low and go right behind the intake manifold in this dented area. And the nice thing about that sliding grommet is there's plenty of length, and no matter pretty much where you put it, you can make it work. I didn't want to put it over here on that plate where it was real visible. I think my the catch can is probably going to mount there, and possibly my surge tank. I'm not sure if I'm going to put the surge tank on the firewall or somewhere else in here, or even in the back of the car. I'll get into that when I get into it. But yeah, I think I'm going to punch a hole back there behind the intake manifold. That should be pretty clean. and then start feeding the wires through. I got my hole saw here, which is, I think, a 2-inch drill bit, which means it'll really drill a hole about 2 1/8. And considering they're sloppy, this may be perfect for 2 1/4. But this is going to happen tomorrow because it is now about 3 hours later than when I set out to do this. Why? I'll show you. So I was getting ready to do this stuff, and I realized I wanted to go to the junkyard. It was Saturday. It was getting to be, middle of the day, and it's a nice day, and I like to stop by once in a while just to see what's there. And there was an area that they keep where stuff's going to get scrapped out. So it's on its last legs. If it's there today, it may not be there tomorrow. It's going to get crushed. So I saw a 2003 up, unknown year GMC Sierra that was all stripped. I said, oh, I need some, maybe some core PCMs. So I cut the PCM out, brought it home, did a quick read on it, and noticed that the 10th, maybe it's the 8th digit, don't remember, in the VIN was B. Well, if you see a B, that means all aluminum 5.3, 310 horse. And this truck was pretty much stripped. There was no transmission, no nothing in it. The engine was in it and just sitting there. I mean, the alternator was seized from sitting, but the motor was sitting there. I didn't even notice. So as soon as I saw that B, I went back to the junkyard. And now it's in the back of my truck. The price was right for a core. That's all I can say. Because I have no idea if this is any good. I put a ratchet on it before I decided to buy it, and yep, it does turn over. So there was no problem with that. But is it internally damaged? I have no idea. But it is an all aluminum 310 horse 2005 5.3. I just thought that was a pretty good deal. So that has delayed my day today of doing wiring. So I think I'm going to be back on it tomorrow. All right, it's another day after scoring that L33, which is pretty cool. Shoved that in the corner. I think I'll do a video on that, going over the engine, and we'll see if we get lucky and it actually runs. I don't know anything about it, but hey, for the price, is what it is. Maybe I'll get lucky. But I got a little bit of time today. Let's get this harness installed. All right, so obviously in the car, I'm gonna try to get a hole right around there for the harness to come through. Still not quite sure where I'm gonna mount the PCM in here, but probably here. I like to make sometimes a little console fits in the front with cup holders, because you gotta have cup holders, because that's pretty much the priority in any car, right? So let's see if I can get lucky and not totally screw this up. All right, now, oof. Let's just see where that pilot hole went through and make sure I didn't totally screw this up. That will work. Cool. Just want to make sure I didn't totally screw it up before putting the big hole in. Nice. I don't even think I put a hole in the intake. I found the easiest way to do this, to feed this in from the car side, interior side. And feed all this stuff through. Woo! How about a light? There we go. Oh, there we go. Little disco action for you. Cool. Yeah, I'm getting old. All right. So anyway, got to feed all this stuff through the firewall here. Looking at the plug sizes, I think I can just go through and then get the transmission through there. So let's just start feeding stuff through and see what happens. Should have done is noted what side was what. Map sensor, alternator. I think this is all on this side of the engine. Get in there and push some more through. Yeah, you get the idea. Short on time lapse. So you're not watching wires go through a firewall. Alright, so I got the majority of the harness fed through the firewall. Now it's just a matter of getting it all set up so it's all where it needs to be. This stuff here all has to go down below the transmission, so I'm going to feed that down through the back. This is the oxygen sensor for this side. But because I moved it through the turbo, the oxygen sensor is way up front here now, so I'm gonna extend these wires to get up there. So I won't worry so much about that right yet. Map sensor is not gonna get used. All this stuff has enough length to get to the injectors, so that's fine. This stuff all has enough length to get to this side, so that's fine. I just wanna clean it up, get it routed, and yeah. Get it lined up. All right, so I've got the harness pretty much where I want it. The grommet's gonna go right there on the wiring. I dropped down the power feeds for the starter that I'll have to connect. They're back there somewhere. They're down there. And the crank position sensor behind the starter, we'll deal with that. And this bank 2 harness, I'll route that under the rails. I'm going to take these fuel injectors off anyway to check them first before I fire the engine. But I'll run the harness underneath the rails so the rails can come off easy. Same thing over here. Got all our connectors. Some of this stuff is not going to be same color code as GM. So when you do your bugging out of all the wires, after you do each one, just label them and then you know where they go. But it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, everything lines up pretty much where it should be. Like I know this is for the knock sensors, it goes right there. I know this right here is going to be for my crank position sensor, it's right there. And you know, you get the idea. But you label things bank 1 and bank 2. I labeled this like all the bank 2 stuff, so I know all the other stuff is bank 1. And you know, you get how it works. So let me get this sort of laid out. All right, you can see I've got the grommet in place. That 2-inch hole saw worked out fine. And I just have the wires kind of laid out for each side that'll come across the engine. But I think I'm going to do something else before I finish this off. All right, so preliminary work is done on the harness. I mean, we got the hole in, we got the fed to the firewall. I guess we really didn't do a whole lot, but I'm kind of out of time today. But the other issue is, before I lay this harness on here permanently on the engine, I would like to test these fuel injectors, because they have been sitting for, I don't even know how long, at least a year. And anything it seems that I have LS style or Vortex style, whatever you want to say, these injectors just don't like to sit. It seems like even on running vehicles, if I let them sit for a year and go to fire them, it's pot luck whether I'm going to have a misfire or not because of a stuck injector or just dirty injector. So before finishing up the layout of the harness, you know, overall the rails and all that stuff, I'm going to pull the fuel rails off and actually test all these injectors, see if they work. If they don't, we'll try to clean them up, get them going, put them back on the engine, and then finish up the wiring harness install. So that'll be on the next one, because I'm out of time for today. So hopefully I'll see you on the next video, and hopefully you're following along. We are going to get this thing running soon, I hope. So see you on the next one. Have a good one.